Welcome to Lesson 13, Material Operations, Part 2 of the SDS2 Getting Started series. We will now continue with material fit operations. On this torn off drop-down menu, we can see that there are a number of operations that exist. For example, fit exact, fit miter, cope, fit notch, fuse, which allows you to join two pieces of material together as one, cut on plane, cut layout, chamfer material, bend on line, bend on radius, and frame. We'll begin with the fit miter operation. Selecting the fit miter, I'm going to select my first material and then hold down Shift to add material to this selection. Right click and hit OK. Now the system will prompt me for a clearance between the mitered materials. Let's poke in a 1/2 inch. At the top left of the screen, it'll ask me to verify this particular cut. If I go ahead and say no, the system will offer another type of cut situation. If I go ahead and hit OK, I'm back to where I originally was. Let's go ahead and just complete this fit miter using the first operation. I will answer yes to the first option. I would now like to cope this material around this particular column. Using the fit cope operation, I will select the material as indicated in the top left status line, and that's the one to fit, and I want to hold down Shift and fit to this particular column right here. Select OK. Once again, type in the clearance that I wish to use, and then answer yes to the prompt on top. This next screen is called the Change Options screen, and what it will do, as we can see through each of these prompts, you have change all like material on this member, change all like members with the same mark, change all like members with different mark, change all identical material. All materials marked as P19 will be changed. Now you'll notice that these ones here are disabled. Change all like materials in assembly. So if this material is in something called an assembly, which we'll cover later, the system will go ahead and change that material in the assembly as well. Currently there's only one piece of material, so therefore all of this is disabled. When there are more pieces of material, the quantities will be indicated over here on the right, plus any particular warnings will be indicated down here in the bottom. Now you notice I may have skipped this keep existing piece mark. This is a useful command, but if not used carefully can cause a lot of difficulties. What it does is it tells the system to keep this particular piece mark that's on this material and not change it. Well, that can sometimes cause problems when you're only going to go ahead and change one material here and the other one is hidden in assembly. Nonetheless, we're just going to go ahead and leave it as it is, go ahead and select OK, and allow the system to perform that cope. One more time, I'm going to fit cope around this material right here. Now you'll notice I did not place a 1/2 inch on this. It's butt right all the way around the outside. Let's go ahead and change that. Let's go ahead and type in a 1/2 inch and go ahead and select OK, and we now have that clearance. Let's go down to the other end of this member. I turn it to solid, makes a better visual, and now I'm going to introduce you to fit exact. And what this system does is the same thing. You select the material and the one that you want to fit to, right click and hit OK, and I'm going to type in a 1/2 inch. Now what this will do is it'll cut completely around this particular material, as you can see right here. Let's go ahead and select yes for now, leaving the materials as they are. I will now move to the cut on plane operation. This acts as a giant guillotine. You select 2 points, and along that plane, that selected material will be cut. Let's go ahead and add in some construction lines to this piece of material right here. Now I'm going to place a construction line using my intersection construction point right down there at the bottom, perpendicular. Now let's execute this cut on plane operation. I select cut on plane, I select the material, Now I can locate 2 points. Now watch what's going to happen. I'm not going to select the points on the material, but I'll just select point 1, point 2, and along that plane this material will be cut. Go ahead and select yes to verify this cut. Once again, the change all operations will occur for those pieces that have the identical piece mark of P20. Let's go ahead and hit OK. Let's continue with the stretch material command. I will locate this particular piece of material. Now I'm going to execute my stretch command. Because I've already selected, you could do post or pre-selection. I went and did pre-selection. Now the system's asking me to go ahead and create a box around what I want to stretch. I'm going to go put an area box around the end of this piece. Go ahead and select yes. Locate a reference point and locate the point to where I want to stretch this particular piece of material. Now the system is showing me the stretch operation. It's showing me what's going to occur. I'm going to go ahead and say yes to the stretch operation. And now we can see, let's turn this member to stick here. We can see that this particular piece of material has been stretched. Now I'd like to point out that depth check does play a part in this particular stretching operation. So for example, if I was to come in here and turn my depth check out, let's go ahead and make this just 3 inches. So now with depth check we can see we have this cut surface along the top right here. Let's perform this stretch operation again. And I'm going to go ahead and select 2 points. Now notice that it's a different color. It's orange, and it's asking me, do you want to abort this operation? If I say no, the system aborts it anyways and asks me to stretch again. So why did it not stretch that? Well, because of depth check, I'm not grabbing that entire piece, and we can't go in there using stretch and distort this piece. So therefore the system says, hey, this operation cannot be done. Watch out for that. Depth check does catch a lot of people when they're performing those stretch operations. Let's go ahead and turn this member back to solid. And let's just turn this to stick so we can clear that other piece out of our way. Now I'm going to show you the cut layout operation. Depth check plays a part in this particular operation. So, for example, I'm just going to add in some free construction lines here. And I'm going to surface the top of this particular part. Now using the cut layout, depth check does play a part. So for example, we are now at the top surface of this plate, which is a 1/4 inch thick. I'm going to turn my depth check and we're going to go in just 1/8 of an inch. Now I'm going to perform my cut layout. Locate my piece of material. Locate my first point. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to locate a second point. You'll notice over here I'm going to pull into my focus this little screen here that says I can round the corners. So let's go ahead and round the corner at 3 inches. Watch what happens. See how it's rounding that corner? Go ahead and turn that off. Let's go back up here to intersection construction line. Go back to my original point and select done. Select yes for this cut. There's that screen for all the material that has a like. Now what I want to point out here as we look at this, I only cut in 1/8 of an inch deep. Let's go ahead and turn that depth check back to 3 feet. And we can see that I cut in just 1/8 of an inch. The other operation that I would like to show you here is that the system will follow perpendicular to your screen orientation when you use cut layout. So for example, I'm going to select this piece of material here. Using my free point, let's just go ahead and add in some points. Again, you can go ahead and select done. Create radiuses. So now when we look at this piece, you'll notice that this particular hole is now actually perpendicular to that cut plane. Now whenever you perform a material operation on the main material of a member, this will cause the member to become what we call graphical, user material. So when it goes back through process, it's not going to change any of those operations, material operations that you've done to this particular piece. Once again, I'm going to remove that user on that particular column, run it back through process, and we'll see now that column has gone back to its original. Let's go ahead and undo view back to my original view here. Now, as we can see, depth check again does play a part, as well as your screen orientation when you're dealing with this cut layout operation. Now, this is great when you're dealing with doing, for example, a clip on the top of a member. Let's go in here and set my depth check back into 3 feet. So let's say I wanted to clip just the top corner of this particular member, but not the bottom flange. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to set my depth check to go in. Let's just go ahead and say 3 inches in. And now I can go ahead and I can do a fit operation. I can do a cut layout operation. And let's just go ahead and pick a few random points here. And let's go ahead and turn that depth check back into 3 feet. Now we can see that on this particular piece, I only clipped the top corner of that member. Remember again that this is a operation on a main material, which does set this main material to graphical. That's how you clear, one method I should say, to clear graphical material. This next point is very, very important. If I come into a material that has had some manual modifications, if I were to go into my properties and say add in a piece of data to this, I'm just going to type in 3 in here. The system will prompt me here, do you want to regenerate this material to clear user modified material operations? If I say no, the only thing that will be updated, again this is only if I'm going into my properties, will be that addition to the custom properties or change that I've made. Now, if I were to go in here and hit OK and then say yes, what's going to happen is the system is going to clear all of those material operations that were performed on that particular piece. Be careful with that. A lot of people have wiped out work by going in there and hitting OK and saying yes to that piece and losing all of that data. Now the only thing that doesn't make that change is if you go into those custom properties and make a change to that information there. That is stored in that screen. When you hit OK to that next screen, it wipes out all that information if you say yes, but it will store the custom property. Okay, hopefully that was not too confusing. I'm going to come into this particular piece here and just modify again. I'm going to go material setback and let's place in here 13 inches clearance. So now we have a nice little 1/2 inch clearance here, and I'm going to add a cope 1/2 inch around the outside of that piece. Let's go ahead and answer yes, and let's get rid of all of these construction lines. This will now conclude Lesson 13, Material Operations Part 2.